As we start the countdown to the midterms, President Trump is repeating his usual list of election falsehoods, claiming without evidence that our elections are rigged, stolen, and a laughingstock all over the world. Now he's called for nationalizing elections, urging Congress to pass the SAVE Act. So what exactly does that mean? If passed, this bill would require people to provide proof of U.S. citizenship, like a passport or birth certificate, when registering to vote in federal elections. But voting groups like the Brennan Center warn that the bill could block millions of people from voting and that it's actually an attack on the freedom to vote. Sean Morales-Doyle is the director of the Brennan Center's Voting Rights and Election Program. Great to have you, Sean. Republicans say that this law secures our voting process, and requiring proof of citizenship to vote is just common sense. Why do you disagree?
Well, first of all, our elections are already secure. But secondly, it's not common sense to require these kinds of documents for people to register to vote when we know that 21 million adult American citizens don't have ready access to a passport or a birth certificate, which is exactly what they'd have to show in order to get registered to vote if the SAVE Act would pass. So this bill would surely block millions of American citizens from voting. And I don't think it's common sense at all to block people from voting in order to make our elections more secure.
Well, you've done studies on voter ID. How likely are people to actually have these documents readily available?
Yeah, I think it's really important for people to realize that this isn't really a voter ID law. This is a show your papers law. We're not talking about a driver's license here. I saw that graphic at the beginning mentioned a real ID compliant license, and it's true that the bill suggests you could use a real ID compliant license, but it's not actually true because it says that license has to demonstrate you're a citizen on its face, and real IDs don't do that. Real IDs are available to both citizens and non-citizens alike, and they don't demonstrate whether you're a citizen. So what we're talking about here is a show your papers law, where you'd have to show your birth certificate or your U.S. passport to vote. And again, there are millions, tens of millions of American citizens that don't have ready access to those documents. Only about half of Americans even have a passport. And so I don't think this is, a reasonable solution if we had a problem. And the reality is that we don't have a problem to solve here in the first place.
Well, Democrats warned that this law and Trump's calls to federalize elections are actually laying the groundwork for him to influence the midterms. Is that a real worry?
Absolutely. I think in his first year in office, Trump has engaged in a concerted campaign to undermine our 2026 elections. This call to nationalize elections is just him saying it out loud, but he's been doing it for months before then. It began on the first day of his administration when he pardoned the people responsible for January 6th, sending a clear message to people who might subvert elections that he'll have their back. It continued with him issuing an executive order in which he attempted to implement exactly the policy in the SAVE Act or something very similar to it by executive fiat. And it has continued since then. And his office, the White House, actually said when he made this comment about nationalizing elections, he was talking about the SAVE Act. That doesn't really make sense, but it does reveal that the SAVE Act is just another prong of this concerted multi-pronged campaign to undermine our elections. I think people should be worried about it, but I also think that we have the tools to fight back against it and make sure that we can have free and fair elections again in 2026.
All right, Sean Morales-Doyle, I know we'll be talking a lot all the way up to midterms and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you.